Hashtag what made Ruth the most loyal woman in the Bible? Picture this. A foreign woman standing at the crossroads of destiny, clutching the hand of her bitter mother-in-law as they stare into an uncertain future. Behind them lies everything familiar, everything safe. Ahead, nothing but questions, darkness, and the promise of hardship. What would you do? What would any rational person do? They would turn back. They would choose security over sacrifice. They would save themselves. But Ruth made a choice that would echo through eternity. A decision so profound that it would literally reshape the bloodline of kings and the very lineage of the Messiah himself. But here's the mystery that haunts every page of her story. What was it about this Moabite woman that made her loyalty so unbreakable, so pure, so devastating in its power that God himself would weave her thread into the tapestry of salvation? Tonight, we're about to uncover the shocking truth behind what made Ruth the most loyal woman in the Bible, and why her story isn't just ancient history, it's a blueprint for transformation that could change your life forever. The year was approximately 1100 BC. The land of Israel was dying. Famine had gripped Bethlehem like an iron fist, squeezing the life from its people, forcing families to make impossible choices. Among them was Elimelech, a man whose very name meant God is my king, yet who would soon face a test that would shake his faith to its core. With his wife Naomi and their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, he made a decision that would set in motion events beyond his wildest imagination. They would leave the promised land. They would journey to Moab, enemy territory, the land of pagans and false gods. Can you feel the weight of that choice? This wasn't just a family relocating, this was spiritual exile, a voluntary stepping away from God's covenant people into the realm of the unknown. But sometimes, in our darkest moments, what looks like departure is actually preparation. What appears to be defeat is actually divine positioning. In Moab, life seemed to stabilize. The boys grew into men. They married Mahlon to Ruth, Chilion to Orpah, two foreign women, raised in the worship of Chemosh, the detestable god of the Moabites, now part of an Israelite family. For 10 years, they built something that looked like happiness. But the storm was gathering, invisible, inevitable. Then came the avalanche. Death arrived like a thief in the night. First Elimelech, the patriarch, collapsed into eternity. Then, in a cruel succession that defied all natural order, both sons followed their father into the grave. In a matter of months, 3 women were left alone in a world that offered no safety net for the widowed, no security for the abandoned. Naomi, once full of joy as her name suggested, was now empty, bitter, broken. This is where most stories would end. This is where logic would dictate surrender. But this is precisely where Ruth's story begins to reveal something that would shake the foundations of heaven itself. Naomi made the only sensible decision: return to Bethlehem. Word had reached her that God had visited his people and ended the famine. There was nothing left for her in Moab but graves and memories. But what about her daughters-in-law? Logic dictated they should stay. Culture demanded they stay. Survival instinct screamed they should stay. Their gods, their people, their future husbands, everything that made sense was in Moab. Orpah understood this. She kissed Naomi goodbye and returned to her mother's house, to her gods, to her people. History would forget her name, not because she was wicked, but because she chose the reasonable path. She chose what everyone would have chosen. But Ruth was about to utter words that would transcend time, words that would be quoted at weddings, inscribed on monuments, and whispered in the hearts of lovers for millennia to come. But here's what most people miss: these weren't just beautiful words. They were a declaration of war against everything that seemed logical, safe, and secure. Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me. Do you hear what just happened? A pagan woman just invoked the God of Israel to witness her vow. A Moabite just chose to align herself with a people who were commanded to show no mercy to Moabites. She just volunteered for a life of poverty, widowhood, and potential rejection. She just chose love over logic, loyalty over safety, faith over fear. But why? What was it about Naomi that inspired such devotion? What had Ruth seen in this family, in their God, in their way of life that was worth sacrificing everything? The answer lies not in what Naomi said, but in what she had lived. For 10 years, Ruth had watched this Israelite family worship the living God. She had seen their faith tested by exile, by loss, by disappointment, yet never abandoned. She had witnessed something in their character, their values, their unshakable trust in Yahweh that made her own gods seem like shadows, mere echoes of something infinitely greater. Ruth had tasted living water, and she could never go back to drinking from broken cisterns. The journey to Bethlehem was a pilgrimage into the unknown. Two women, walking the dusty roads toward a town called House of Bread, that had been empty of bread for so long. They arrived as outcasts, as failures, as burdens on society. Naomi, bitter and broken, introduced herself not by her name but by her pain. "Don't call me Naomi," she said. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter." Here's where the story takes a turn that reveals something profound about loyalty. Most people think loyalty is about feeling good about the person you're loyal to. But Ruth's loyalty was about to be tested in ways that would strip away every comfortable assumption about what devotion really means. Naomi was not an easy person to love at this point. She was angry at God, bitter about her circumstances, and convinced that the Almighty had turned against her. She had no resources, no prospects, no hope. Following her meant accepting a life of grinding poverty and social rejection. Yet Ruth never wavered. She clung to Naomi not because Naomi was pleasant, but because love had transformed her very identity. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. Coincidence? In God's economy, there are no coincidences, only divine appointments waiting to unfold. Ruth immediately went to work, gleaning in the fields according to Israelite law that allowed the poor to gather leftover grain. But here's what's remarkable: she didn't just glean. She gleaned with excellence, with dignity, with a work ethic that caught everyone's attention. And whose field did she happen to choose? Boaz, a man of standing, a kinsman of Elimelech, a man whose name meant strength, and whose character would prove worthy of that name. But Ruth didn't know any of this when she started working. She simply put her head down and did what needed to be done to care for her mother-in-law. This is where we see something crucial about Ruth's loyalty. It wasn't passive sentimentality. It was active, sacrificial love in motion. While Naomi sat in despair, Ruth rose before dawn and worked until sunset. While Naomi mourned the past, Ruth built toward an uncertain future. While Naomi questioned God's goodness, Ruth lived it out in practical, tangible ways. When Boaz first noticed Ruth, he didn't see her beauty, he saw her character. He had heard about everything she had done for Naomi, how she had left her homeland and family to care for a woman who had nothing left to give. Word of her loyalty had spread through Bethlehem like wildfire. In a world where people abandoned each other at the first sign of hardship, Ruth's faithfulness stood out like a blazing torch in the darkness. But the true test of Ruth's loyalty was yet to come. When Naomi learned that Boaz was a kinsman redeemer, someone who could potentially restore their family's fortunes, she hatched a plan that would require Ruth to do something that could either result in marriage or scandal. She was to approach Boaz at night, uncover his feet, and lie down beside him, essentially proposing marriage in the most vulnerable way possible. Think about what this meant for Ruth. She was risking her reputation, her safety, her future on Naomi's judgment. If Boaz rejected her, she could be branded as immoral. If he misunderstood her intentions, she could be seen as promiscuous. But Ruth trusted Naomi's wisdom because her loyalty ran deeper than fear. That night, Ruth crept to the threshing floor where Boaz was sleeping. She uncovered his feet and lay down, waiting. When he woke and found her there, she spoke words that revealed the true depth of her transformation. "I am your servant Ruth. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." Notice what she called herself: not just Ruth, but your servant Ruth. She had embraced not just Naomi's God, but Israel's culture, Israel's customs, Israel's future. She was no longer the Moabite woman who had married into an Israelite family. She was Ruth, daughter of Israel, child of the Most High God. Boaz was stunned by her character. "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he said. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor." He recognized that her proposal wasn't born of desperation or lust, but of loyalty to family and faith in God's provision. But there was a complication. Another kinsman redeemer had a prior claim. According to the law, this man had first right of refusal. Boaz could have ignored this, could have claimed Ruth for himself, could have bent the rules. But he was a man of integrity, just as Ruth was a woman of loyalty. He would do this properly, legally, honorably. The next morning, Boaz went to the city gate where legal matters were settled. He called for the nearer kinsmen, assembled the required witnesses, and laid out the situation. The man could redeem Naomi's land, but it came with a condition: he would also have to marry Ruth to carry on the family name. The moment of truth had arrived. Would Ruth find her redeemer? Would loyalty be rewarded? Would God honor the faith of this foreign woman who had risked everything for love? The kinsman hesitated. He could afford to redeem the land, but marrying Ruth would complicate his own inheritance. His children by Ruth would carry on Elimelech's name, not his own. It would cost him financially and compromise his family's interests. So he passed. He removed his sandal and handed it to Boaz, officially releasing his claim. "Today you are witnesses," Boaz declared to the assembled crowd, "that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property." The crowd erupted in celebration. "We are witnesses," they cried. "May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem." But they had no idea how prophetic their words would prove to be. Ruth's loyalty was about to be rewarded in ways that would echo through eternity. Ruth married Boaz, and together they had a son named Obed. But here's where the story takes a turn that reveals the breathtaking scope of God's plan. This child, born to a Moabite woman who chose loyalty over security, would become the grandfather of David, Israel's greatest king. Through Ruth's lineage would come the dynasty that would rule Israel for centuries. But it doesn't stop there. Fast forward 1,000 years, and we find another woman giving birth in Bethlehem, the same town where Ruth's story unfolded. Her name was Mary, and her child would be called Jesus, the son of David, the Lion of Judah, the Redeemer of mankind. Ruth the Moabite, the foreign woman who chose loyalty over logic, had become part of the Messianic line. Her name appears in Matthew's genealogy of Christ, one of only 4 women mentioned in Jesus' lineage. Do you see what happened here? Ruth's loyalty to Naomi wasn't just a beautiful story about family devotion. It was a divine appointment that would literally change the course of human history. When she said, "Your people will be my people and your God my God," she wasn't just making a personal commitment, she was volunteering to be part of God's redemptive plan for humanity. But here's the question that should haunt every one of us. What was it about Ruth that made her capable of such loyalty? What separated her from Orpah, from the unnamed kinsman redeemer, from countless others who chose security over sacrifice? The answer lies in something deeper than personality or culture. Ruth had encountered something in Naomi's family that transformed her very understanding of what life could be. She had seen faith that persisted through famine, love that endured through loss, hope that survived even heartbreak. She had witnessed people who lived as if there was something more important than their immediate comfort, something more valuable than their temporary safety. Ruth had discovered that there are some things worth dying for, some relationships worth sacrificing for, some causes worth losing everything for. She had learned that loyalty isn't just an emotion, it's a choice, made again and again, regardless of circumstances or feelings or temporary setbacks. And here's where Ruth's story becomes our story. In a world that celebrates independence, that encourages us to look out for ourselves first, that teaches us to abandon relationships when they become difficult, Ruth stands as a testament to a different way of living. She shows us that the most profound joy, the deepest satisfaction, the greatest impact comes not from protecting ourselves but from pouring ourselves out for others. Think about the people in your life who need your loyalty right now. Maybe it's a family member going through a difficult season. Maybe it's a friend who's made mistakes. Maybe it's a spouse who's struggling. Maybe it's a community that's facing challenges. What would it look like for you to make a Ruth-like commitment to say, "Where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people"? But Ruth's story teaches us something even more profound. Her ultimate loyalty wasn't to Naomi, it was to Naomi's God. When she declared, "Your God will be my God," she was making the commitment that would transform everything else. Her loyalty to Naomi flowed from her loyalty to Yahweh. Her faithfulness to family was rooted in her faithfulness to the one who is faithful to all. This is the secret that made Ruth's loyalty unbreakable. She had found something eternal to anchor her temporary commitments to. She had discovered that when you're loyal to God first, your loyalty to others becomes supernatural, sustained not by their worthiness but by His faithfulness. Today, in our age of broken promises and abandoned commitments, we desperately need to rediscover Ruth's secret. We need to learn that loyalty isn't just about feeling good about someone, it's about choosing love when love is costly. It's about staying when everyone else is leaving. It's about building bridges when others are burning them. Ruth's story didn't end with her marriage to Boaz or even with the birth of Obed. It continued through David's Psalms, through Solomon's wisdom, through the prophecies of Isaiah and Jeremiah, through the birth of Jesus in that same Bethlehem where she once gleaned barley. Every Christmas carol that celebrates the birth of Christ echoes with the loyalty of a Moabite woman who chose love over fear. But perhaps most remarkably, Ruth's story continues in you. Every time you choose loyalty over convenience, love over logic, faithfulness over self-protection, you're walking in Ruth's footsteps. Every time you refuse to abandon someone who's going through a difficult season, you're proving that her legacy lives on. The question isn't whether you'll face moments that test your loyalty, you will. The question is what will anchor you when those moments come? Will you, like Orpah, make the reasonable choice and return to familiar ground? Or will you, like Ruth, trust that there's something more valuable than safety, something more precious than security? Ruth teaches us that the most extraordinary life isn't found in seeking extraordinary circumstances, it's found in bringing extraordinary loyalty to ordinary situations. She wasn't a prophet or a priestess, a queen or a warrior. She was a widow who chose to care for another widow, a foreigner who chose to serve the God of Israel, a woman who chose love when love was costly. And because of that choice, her name is remembered alongside Sarah and Rachel and Leah as one of the mothers of faith. Because of that choice, the Messiah himself carries her lineage in his veins. Because of that choice, every person who has ever found redemption through Jesus Christ owes something to the loyalty of Ruth the Moabite. This is the power of loyalty rightly placed. It doesn't just change your story, it changes history itself. Ruth couldn't have imagined that her commitment to a bitter old woman would result in her great-great-grandson becoming the king of Israel, or that her loyalty would echo through the corridors of eternity. She simply chose faithfulness in the moment, and God wove that faithfulness into the tapestry of redemption. So here's the challenge that Ruth's story places before each of us. Will you choose loyalty when it costs you something? Will you choose faithfulness when it's not convenient? Will you choose love when love demands sacrifice? The person you're loyal to may not be able to repay you. The cause you serve may not bring immediate rewards. The commitment you make may require more than you imagined when you first made it. But if Ruth's story teaches us anything, it's that loyalty planted in the soil of faith produces a harvest that extends far beyond what we can see or imagine. When you choose faithfulness, you're not just changing your circumstances, you're potentially changing the world. The most loyal woman in the Bible wasn't born into the covenant people of God. She wasn't raised in the faith. She wasn't even the obvious choice for divine favor. But she made a choice that transformed her from Moabite outsider to matriarch of the Messianic line. She shows us that loyalty isn't about who you are, it's about who you choose to become. Tonight, as you close your eyes, remember Ruth standing at that crossroads, choosing love over logic, faithfulness over fear. Remember that your choices of loyalty to God, to family, to friends, to community are writing a story that may echo long after you're gone. Choose well. Choose faithfully. Choose like Ruth, and watch as God transforms your loyalty into legacy, your faithfulness into forever.